The college football playoff is a method recently incorporated by the league to try to pick the champion of the nation in the most fair way possible. People have been asking for a playoff for the long time, and now we finally got it a few years ago. Anyways, what they do is a large pool of people called the playoff committee picks who they believe are the top 4 teams in the nation to play against each other in a tournament to decide the champion of college football. So this year there has been some controversy. They pick the top 3 teams, and those teams are set with a no debate. However, the number 4 spot kinda could have gone either way between 2 teams, so that led to a big dispute over who deserved to be in the number 4 spot. This debate was between Ohio State and Alabama. I believe that Alabama deserved to be in the college football playoff over Ohio State, and I've got a few reasons why. First, Alabama was number 1 all year. They were ranked number 1 in all the rankings. They were killing everybody they played, and they went undefeated. Up until the last game of their season, they suffered 1 loss. This loss was to a number 2 ranked team, Auburn. It was away, and they only lost by 2 scores. Now that loss kept them out of their conference championship game. But that's still a great season with only 1 loss, so that shouldn't keep them out of the college football playoff. Ohio State, on the other hand, gets to play in their conference championship, but that's only because they have a weaker conference. They have 2 losses, one of which was to Oklahoma, which is a solid football team, don't get me wrong, but they got beat by multiple scores by them. But the loss that really keeps them out of the playoff is when they lost to an unranked team, Iowa, who is unranked, 7-5, and they beat Ohio State by 33 points. Now, if you can't beat an unranked team or even play with them and not get blown out, there's no way you deserve to be in the college football playoff. People also argue that Ohio State plays in a tougher conference than Alabama, which is totally false and kind of opinionated. People argue that the Big Ten, which is Ohio State's conference, is a better conference than the SEC, which is Alabama's conference. The SEC has been the strongest conference in college football for many, many years now, and the Big Ten is simply weak. Other than Ohio State, there's only 2 or 3 maybe decent teams, and that's only because they play very weak opponents in that conference. People argue that Ohio State had a tougher schedule simply because they play Penn State and Michigan State, who are their top opponents. They argue that Alabama doesn't play any teams of this caliber. However, Alabama played against teams like LSU and Mississippi State, which have equal and better records than Ohio State's top opponents. Therefore, you can't argue that Ohio State plays a tougher schedule than Alabama. In conclusion, Alabama has had one of the best seasons ever in the history of college football, going undefeated all year and only suffering 1 loss to a very good team. One tough loss like that should not keep them out of the playoff. It shouldn't penalize them that bad because they slipped up 1 time after such an amazing season. Alabama's 1 loss was a much better loss to have than Ohio State's 2 losses. Ohio State's loss to an unranked team that alone should keep them out of the playoff. You can't lose to an unranked team that bad and still make the college football playoff. And Alabama's top opponents are just as good, if not better, than Ohio State's top opponents. Therefore, Alabama definitely deserves to be in the college football playoff over Ohio State.